Hey, sports fans, Greg Medford from Medford MKT U.S.A. What's going on? Happy Veterans Day. Here I am, 26 years since I got out of the Marine Corps. I've never had a Veterans Day off. I work every Veterans Day. When I was in the Marine Corps, I didn't have Veterans Day off. When people say thank you for your service, I'm always embarrassed. I guess I'm embarrassed because I feel like I could have done a better job. I'm embarrassed because I didn't retire. I got out of the military and I feel like I was a quitter. I guess I'm embarrassed because so many other people have given and sacrificed so much. So when people thank me for my service, it makes me uncomfortable as hell. And I think about I think about Corporal Katansky, who became a colonel and stayed in and served the Corps. I think about Corporal Adiko. I think about Sergeant Ogden and all the guys that I served with and how much time they spent in and how much service they gave. And I think that I was kind of a selfish prick, and I got out and went into the civilian world, went into the private sector because I hated the slow grind of groupthink and government bureaucracy. And I didn't sacrifice anything. I didn't get wounded. I didn't get shot. I was in a really quick, easy war, and I was able to kind of, in man terms, trump most of my friends. But since then, all the kids have gone off and been in a real war and come back, a lot more salty and grisly than I could ever be. But I want to send a shout out to all my comrades in arms and my veteran brothers from, and you guys know I don't say brother easily, from the other branches. And my veteran brothers from the Marine Corps. And I think about, I think about the young men that I've seen come back in boxes and body bags, and friends of my, children of my friends now who've come back dead, and the funeral I went to this past year and the year before and the year before that. And the friends that I've made in the knife industry, the friends that I've made who I've lost to suicide and PTSD and all of the really kind of ghosts of war that bang around inside everybody. So I say Happy Veterans Day, and I'm very conflicted about it. And I imagine it's much like, you see these guys who've gotten their Congressional Medal of Honor, and a lot of times they're one of the only people that lived, or one of very few that lived, or it's almost always the most traumatic moment of that young man's life. It's the most traumatic day. It's the worst day. Usually their friends died in their arms and covered in their friends' blood, and they live the rest of their life in the shadow of that moment, and have to deal with basically reliving the experience of the trauma that happened that day. In a very, very tiny way, it's like Veterans Day, Veterans Day parades and all of that. For those of us who are alive, for those of us who are kind of like gun types, infantry, frontline types, it's a very mixed bag day for us, because all of us know people that died and have died, and for those of us, a lot of people in the military don't serve up on the very front. There's 8 or 9 people that need to support every lunatic guy, like me, wearing a gas mask with a rifle in my hands, running down the street with my buddies. It takes 8 or 9, real dedicated, organized, smart human beings to support us being there in a safe way. So I say Happy Veterans Day to those guys, but those are 8 or 9 out of 10. But those guys like me, it's pretty mixed. I think we're very honored to be able to serve. And the problem is, a lot of times we were so young we didn't even get it. I was so young I didn't even get it. I wanted the adventure. I would have done it for free. I didn't have some ignoble drive when I was 17 years old and I joined the Marine Corps. So I say happy Veterans Day to the 8 or 9 out of 10 who supported frontline guys. And for my frontline guys, there's a couple gals too. For my frontliners, I just give you the quiet nod, the pursed lip, a little bit of acknowledgement. And I think those of us who are in that position, here it is on Veterans Day. You know what we want to do? Mostly we want to go to work. We want to see our kids. Well, so happy Veterans Day. I'm sitting here inspecting knives, getting ready for the New York Custom Knife Show. And I'm hoping that I see a bunch of you guys from the East Coast. I hope you come out to the show. It's in Jersey City because the socialists of Manhattan have decided that the New York Custom Knife Show, which ran there for years and years and years, can't be in New York City anymore. And they only want cops and gangsters to be the ones with guns and knives and everyone else to be defenseless sheeple. But I love the city. I love going there. I'm going to go to McSorley's. I'm going to drink some ale, hopefully with some Marine Corps buddies and some of my friends and customers from the knife world. We'll be doing that on Thursday night and Friday night at McSorley's, and then either Peter Luger's for dinner on Thursday, which reminds me, I better make a reservation. Peter Luger's on Thursday or Friday night. Have some steak, and then I may just walk around the village and get a slice of carbs, a slice of New York carbs, some pizza, and you know, I think sometimes, talk about PTSD for a minute. I think sometimes talking about things that happened in the past kind of flare up PTSD. I know it gets my hackles up, puts me in a different place. I don't have a bunch of PTSD, but I know people who were freaked out by missile drills, and I know people who were freaked out at the prospect of their own death. I didn't really think about it. I was kind of in denial. Maybe that's why young men are supposed to go to war more than old men. But for you guys who are out there suffering from it, who've been in gunfights, and when it comes up in conversation, it jilts you. I hope you can get a moment of reprieve from it. And in the words of the poet Bukowski, one of my favorite lines of his was, "Run, young man, run from the soft hand of your mother and grandmother to the stern hand of your father, run." He saw something, and it was about the health of sternness and quiet. And I think everybody who has suffered from PTSD, I don't know how much the talk therapy helps, but I think time and quiet and also being around other people who have been what you've been through and seeing how they deal with it can help you. It's just like anything else. You get this big hammer and somebody tells you you got to break these stones apart. If you've never done that before, the stones and the hammer win. What we find out is that men become as tough as the things which they confront. So you're out there trying to break a stone with this hammer, and the hammer kicks your ass, and you look over and you see a guy he's been on the chain gang for years, and you watch him swing a hammer and you go, oh shit. I could tell in 2 seconds. You could tell if a guy swung a hammer before. You watch him swing a sledgehammer. You watch and you learn a little bit from it. All of a sudden you go back to breaking rocks and you can do it. And I feel like PTSD and the ravages of war are like breaking rocks. They're rocks that fall out of the sky at any given moment and hit you in the head. And you got to find a way to crush them. And how do you crush them? You'll watch somebody else who's walked in that place where you're at, and you look at their hands and you watch their technique. And I think dealing with PTSD is much the same. We all have our various strengths and weaknesses, and we get this big rock dropped on our head from being in combat theater and being in an environment that is outside of the normal reality. And I think that whether you're a cop or a first responder, you know, everybody who's dealing with these things that happen outside the rules, when those things happen, they crack your cosmic egg a little bit. And I think seeing how other people deal with the crack in the cosmic egg is helpful. I think talking with people who haven't walked the walk is a fucking waste of time most of the time. Anyway, so I'm going to sit here on Veterans Day with my flag on my chest. Flag up this morning at my house. My kids hanging out because it's a day off of school. Their friends were over for dinner this weekend, and we sat down after I cooked and broke bread, and what I said to them was, listen, what's this about? What's Veterans Day about? What's the Marine Corps birthday about? And I sat with this group of kids and I just talked to them. We started with the Revolutionary War, and I talked about the gravity of it. Talked about Tun Tavern. Talked about forming a branch of the military in a bar. Talked about what the Marines did in the Revolutionary War, War of 1812, Civil War, the Indian War, Spanish-American War, the Banana Wars down in South America, in the Philippines, World War I, World War fucking I, Battle of Belleau Wood, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Gulf War, our current conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq, and a million little places in between. We talked about the dates, and we talked about the whys, and we talked about the wherefores and the what-fors and the what-nots. I'll tell you what, you guys, it's a valuable thing to be able to lay that experience down with kids and talk with them about service and warfare and how the wars connect to one another. What was fascinating, and they connected the dots pretty quickly, is how often wars pop up. You know, when I was in the Marine Corps, here's the crazy part. I'll tell you something funny. When I was in the Marine, so this is my Veterans Day chat with y'all, okay? So when I was in the Marine Corps from 88 to 92, let me just write this down, side lash. 88 to 92, when I was in the Marine Corps, it was closer to Vietnam, to the Vietnam War, than now is to when I was in the Marine Corps. That's how ancient history, even, you know, me. So, the kids were taken aback by how often war comes along. And I said, well, that's kind of the way it goes. I said, but we haven't had any big world wars in a while, knock on wood. Hopefully Trump and the Republicans and the Democrats don't get us into a war. It's interesting though. It's really interesting. All right, I'm going to talk about this. Here's a word that's overused. Hero. Super overused word. You watch every Congressional Medal of Honor winner you ever see interviewed, and when you hear them, you see their face while a reporter or someone calls them a hero, and you watch them look down, their eyes blink, Their mouths change, and you can tell they're uncomfortable and they don't like the term used on them. And for every guy that got a CMH, there's 100 who did the exact same thing who didn't get the CMH, and that's what those guys know too. So I sometimes seem like I'm a dick. I'm super pro-veteran, but I'm not pro-veteran entitlement class. I'm really pro-veteran in like your opinion matters, your leadership matters. You've put skin in the game. Your vote matters more to me than most people. And what you think about things matter most. You know what's fascinating is, the more veterans I talk to, the more I find are turned off by warfare. Because we've seen our friends go and we've gone, and we've seen our friends and people go and die. And we see the futility of it all. Hey, Josh. I don't know if the true heroes die. I just think they die. Valor and heroism are just really, 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 really rare. There's just not much heroism. People would have called me a hero if I got hit by a grenade. They would have called me a hero if I stepped on a landmine. Dying in the service of your country and your job's not being a hero. It's doing your fucking job. I don't know how many of you veterans out there feel the same way. You want to come in? Wife.
Did you order something from the place where that's from?
Who is that?
Nectar. Neither is the name of the company.
I didn't order anything from them.
Okay, it might be something else.
All right. I was just sitting here ranting on Veterans Day, wearing one of our new MKT U.S.A. shirts, Medford Knife Tools shirts. Flag on the front, E pluribus unum. I don't know, it's a pretty sexy shirt, right?
I love the shirt.
Yeah, me too. What's on your mind?
I did it for that, because Jack did.
What's on your mind?
Oh, nothing. Just kind of working away, wishing I was hanging out with the kids.
Yeah, I hear you. I was just sitting here thinking about how you're not a hero if you go off to war and you get killed by a
Hi, Josh.
stepping on a mine.
I just emailed you. Your knife will be going out today with your swag. Yeah? So, you're not a hero if what?
No, I was just saying, like, I'm kind of a douche. You know, everyone calls everybody a hero these days.
Yeah, it's used loosely. I think the term's used a little loosely.
Like if a cop runs into a building where there's a robbery going on and shoots the bad guy, he's a hero. I'm like, he's doing his fucking job. He got paid to do that.
True.
So I felt like, maybe that's some apologetic way for people to make it okay. You know, a lot of times you die just walking along. A lot of times you die just driving along and an IED goes off and somebody's dead. Three guys are dead. That's not being a hero. That's different. It's just dying doing your job. And that happens to people all the time. You know, construction workers die doing their job. Are they heroes? Pilots die doing their job all the time. Are they heroes? So on this Veterans Day, I guess what I would say is, let's fucking keep it real, all right? Best paid, most supported, most compensated, and most cared for group of volunteers in all time is the modern military. And for you guys that are youngsters out there who are thinking of going in the military, and my kids, I would tell you, you're not going to be a hero. You're going to do your job. No one's going to give a shit. No one's going to fucking thank you. Do your job. And you're going to get paid. And then when you're in a group of men when you're older, you will have the fucking stories to tell. And the guys who don't have them will wither in your presence. Right?
Yeah.
Like Henry V, right? We married band of brothers. St. Crispin's Day, right? You know, men in our presence when we are old will pity themselves for having not been there. That's what you get. That's why I always do this. It's not to be a fucking hero.
Okay. I'm going to go
Yeah, I'm working too.
I know you
Love you.
are. Love you too. Alright, I'll just open this up then.
Yeah, open it up. Let me know what you got there.
It's addressed to me.
Open it up. See if you got something good.
Probably so.
There's some heroes for sure. I just never met any. I was friends with Chris Kyle, and I didn't get that heroic feel from him at all. I talked to him about it. Each time I saw him, we would get 3 sheets to the wind and bark at the moon about this kind of stuff. You know, maybe Dakota Meyer's a hero. I don't know. But I bet if you ask him, he wouldn't say he is. I just hate the use of the word. Firemen going into burning buildings are not heroes. That's what they signed up for. They want to do that. There's something weird about them.
Anytime a word is overused, it loses its meaning.
I think it's a way to try and to titillate everyone, add some excitingness to a story. The truth is, most people in battle, they just fucking die. They're just standing there with their buddies, they get blown up, they get shot. What do you got there?
Dome labels.
Dome labels, nice.
Tell 'em.
You know, it's not like the movies. Listen, there's some real heroes. A Navy SEAL who jumped on a hand grenade, that's a heroic fucking dude. Holy shit. You know how rare that is? I mean, it's super rare. So I guess on Veterans Day, here's my message. Save hero for really heroic. And everyone else, we just served and got lucky and didn't get blowed up. Does that seem like is that a dick attitude I have? And another hero returning from 3rd deployment in Afghanistan, Sergeant Major Smith, showing up, surprising his daughter on the mound today at Chase Field. Another hero. So yeah, I'm kind of a dick. I was in the infantry. We have a different perspective. We have a different take on life in the infantry. You know why? We're the closest to just being dead, and we're the most disposable. The infantry was just there. You're the most disposable dude there is, and you're the closest to getting wiped out at any moment. More people die in training in the infantry. The infantry, it's just you're disposable. It's always been that way. So I have this perspective. Thanks, Jody. I have this perspective that's kind of crazy. I know it is. I know. I have a take on the world. It's very gallows humor. Like, yeah, this could be the end. We could be dead tomorrow, walking into a room and some kid throws a hand grenade. We're all dead. I guess I've never left that mode. You wanna, I'll tell you something. If you ever hang out with a bunch of infantry guys, here's what you'll find. An absolute nose for bullshit and a huge radar for skepticism, or I would say speaker for skepticism. You will never find a more skeptical lot. The infantry, especially like Marine infantry, I mean, it's the most skeptical, nose for bullshit bunch of uninformed. We're used to basically being uninformed. They're like, it's on need to know basis and you don't need to know. So I guess on this Veterans Day, everything I hated about the Marine Corps, which was a lot, I forgot most of that stuff. What I have left is this. Kind of unabiding love for the Corps and the guys who are in it and the gals who are in it who are still serving to this day. They are awesome. And they sacrifice. And every now and then, they sacrifice for us and they work for us. And every now and then, something amazing happens. Truly amazing. Every now and then in a combat theater with thousands and thousands of Marines, every now and then, one of them does something heroic. Now the generals will say heroism is an everyday occurrence in the Marine Corps. Heroism happens every day. Bullshit. That's self-aggrandizement. If doing your job is being a hero, then the whole fucking world's a hero, and then the word's stupid. Mostly a bunch of people doing their job. But there are not many jobs where every now and then you can be a hero. I can't be a hero in the knife making business, in the manufacturing business. I'm no hero. I just do my job. I can get an award for Businessman of the Year and all this bullshit that gets foisted on me. And if you donate this, we'll make it a Small Businessman of the Year, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, how much I got to pay for that? Nothing like being a hero. Headed to Blade HQ. Some Praetorian scout with a little Betsy Ross flag in it. But in the Marine Corps, it's hard to be a hero like, let's say, as a fighter pilot. It's hard to be a hero. Because guess what? We haven't been in like dogfighting in a long time. I'll tell you what was heroic. Chuck Yeager crashing an airplane and the same day getting in combat, doing dogfighting, and the same day getting in an airplane and climbing back in the airplane and going out and dogfighting again. In the same day. That's pretty heroic. Most guys shit themselves. He got shot down behind enemy lines, walked out, got in an airplane, went back and kept fighting. That's fucking heroic. Everything like that going on anymore. So to General Yeager, with whom I'm friends online, he's friends with a lot of people, with whom I've had words, with whom I have flown next to, with whom I've sat in briefings at Edwards Air Force Base, General Yeager. American hero. No shit. For reals. And probably not as much a hero, he's just a badass. A cantankerous guy. Not loved by people who've met him. But I liked him. I've got this great story, so I'm going to tell you guys. Hey, I'll tell you what. It's Veterans Day. You guys want a war story? I'll give you a Veterans Day war story. Because I've got a couple. They're kind of fun. So, I was in the air show business for a while. And I flew some old military airplanes. And I got invited to Edwards Air Force Base for their big air show that they have out there. What was really cool at the time is the F-22 Raptor was getting debuted. So I got to see its very first debut to the public, I believe, which is at Edwards. So now, this is like, I'm a young guy. I've been out of the Marine Corps a couple years. I've got my own airplanes. I got my own military aircraft. I'm restoring them in my hangars. I wasn't like a big shot in the air show business. There were guys like Sean Tucker and my friend Tim Weber and some of my buddies who were like the best dudes in the business. I wasn't one of those guys. I was really rough and gruff, and I had fun throwing kids in the airplane and signing autographs and doing all that. I mean, but I really liked flying airplanes, and what I liked about air shows was I got to break the rules. I got to fly down a runway. I didn't care about people watching me. I really didn't. I got to fly down a runway a couple 100 miles an hour, upside down, 50 feet off the deck. I got to basically beat up an airfield all by myself. It's like every ass-shining pilot's dream is to just be able to tear it up, right? I mean, even in Top Gun, Maverick wants to request a flyby from the tower, which you would never do. And the tower turns him down, and he does it anyways. I mean, I get to do that shit all the time. And famous places. So anyways, one of my favorites ever, and I have a few, one of my favorites, I'll tell you this story, was at Edwards Air Force Base. So, I fly out to Edwards Air Force Base with one of my friends, who is a insurance guy. I had a Yak 50 at the time, and I'm flying in the show. And I flew that show a couple times. I look studious. I flew that show a couple times. Hey, Jared. And I'll tell you about the first time I flew the Edwards Air Force Base Air Show. And it involves General Yeager. That's why I'm telling you this story. Who I believe is a true American hero. Acknowledged, super accomplished, a consummate warrior and badass. What do you need, Jeff? So, I'm kind of telling us a Veterans Day story. Veterans Day story.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Carry on with your day. Thanks, Billy. So, before every air show, you go into the amphitheater. Usually there's a briefing room someplace. And they give you a brief. And it's about safety concerns. And then those of us who were flying in the show, we would be briefed on some of the peculiarities to the locale, maybe where there were antennas or towers sticking up on the field. You got to remember, a few of us held surface level waivers, which means we were cleared by the FAA to do airbags all the way down to the deck. Took several years to get there and some steps. And you want to be apprised of any local idiosyncrasies, so they brief everybody and they do pictures up, and some major captain or colonel stands up in front and tells you how it is. And then usually his superiors and the overseers of the base, they're usually sitting off to the side, usually a couple of generals or admirals, and they're kind of making sure that the fucking troops aren't going to crash into a local or burn down the base, right? So I'm at Edwards Air Force Base. Now, you got to remember, I'm like a young guy, I'm out of the Marine Corps, and I'm sitting, and this is fucking hallowed ground for me. I had watched all the right stuff when I was younger, and Yeager had always been kind of one of my heroes. I had heard he was kind of an asshole, and everyone always says I'm an asshole, so I probably like the guy. He's probably a good dude. But he was one of my heroes, and then I think about Edwards Air Force Base and the X program and all the flying that's gone out of there, the space program, all the astronauts that flew there. I mean, it is fucking hallowed ground for an aviator. So I go to fly in there the very first time, and I'm leading a two-ship in. We're in, a little close echelon formation. We're headed into the field. I call Joshua Approach, talk in with Joshua Approach, getting into Edwards. Edwards Tower is Yak 9 Alpha Golf. Flight 2, we're inbound from the east. Request the overhead approach. And Tower comes back and says, 9 Alpha Golf, you're approved for the approach. Approved for the approach and the break. Fantastic. So we know that the flyboys were all sitting around with their feet up on the chairs watching who comes in. So we come in. We actually did do an overhead approach. We came in, probably about 200, 210 knots, right over the numbers, hard break up, bank around, low key, down to land on the numbers. But as you're coming in, it's spectacular. You fly in over the lake bed's there, and there's wreckages, there's airplanes sitting out on the lake. They didn't even pick them up. So you remember about some of this stuff that happened, and you're like, I'm in it. So I landed Edwards. It's really cool. I taxi over, do my thing, check in. We go out that night, and everyone wants to go out and drink and act like ding-dongs. And all I wanted to go do is sit in the X1 pit. So at Edwards, out on the concrete tarmac, fenced off on one side is a little pit the shape of the X1. They would drop the X1 down in the pit, and a B-29 would come over the top of it, and that's how they would link up the X1 to the B-29. So I mean, it's Yeager, the X1, B-29, sonic booms, everybody famous. All I want to do is sit in the pit and drink. So we break in, we walk across the field, we climb over the fence or went under the fence. And I sat in the X1 pit there with my buddy and we got our drink on. Security shows up, flashlights on us, we're sitting in the pit, 3 sheets to the wind. So what are you guys doing? I says, we're getting drunk where the X1 was. I mean, what do you think we're doing? They're like, this is a secure area, you can't be here. So,
your interview is here from Chicago.
from Chicago. All right, I'll be with him in a couple minutes. Is he filling out paperwork?
He's done. He's sitting waiting.
All right, I'll be done in a couple minutes.
Got it.
So anyways, we said, where were the air show? They said, that doesn't matter. You can't be. I said, I'm one of the performers. They said, that doesn't matter. I mean, I've been arrested as a performer a couple of times, and this time was no different. They were not happy with me. So that was my evening. I got processed, and finally somebody said, Jesus Christ, don't have these fucking Marine air show pilots. I was like, there was only 2 of us at the time. Don't have these Marine air show pilots come to the show again. What a pain in the ass these guys are. So now I get my flight suit on. I got all my shit. I walk down to the briefing in the morning. It's Friday morning before the show for the warm-up show. And the warm-up show at Edwards is fantastic. So to start the show, they have an F-15 or something go by supersonic at altitude and pop a sonic boom off. Now, it's in the middle of nowhere, and if you've never heard a sonic boom before, it's serious. The fucking place shakes. It was fantastic. I've heard them before because I grew up in fighter country, but just to start an air show with a supersonic boom was so cool. That's like, boom, the show's on. They're like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Medford Air Force Base. So I walk into the briefing room. I got my flight suit. I'm wearing my Navy jacket. I come walking in. I sit down in the briefing room, and I'm one of the first guys there. Next guy there, F-15, an F-15 guy. He got about 1,000 hours in the F-15, and then, hey Ryan, thanks, and to you, Russ Picker, and I'm talking to him, and he's the test pilot for the F-22 program. So he's got a ton of hours, and he's telling me all this shit about the F-22, and he's like, oh yeah, he goes, nobody knows it does this, but check this out. And he starts telling me all this stuff, and he's flying in the show, so he and I are talking, and I'm just like, you know, it's super cool. He's like a colonel. I'm like Lance Corporal Schmuckatelli flying a fucking old radial engine plane. So then he goes to get some coffee. I go into the briefing room and sit down, and I hadn't experienced this quite like this before, but there's a pecking order at Edwards, at least at this show, and the birds of a feather flock together. I sit down on the right-hand side, and the guys start coming in. And I'm sitting there now, I've got like a naval aviator's jacket on, just because it kind of looked apart with what I was doing. And I've got a leather little flight patch on, and it's got enlisted air wings on it, because I'm a pilot and I was enlisted, and fuck it, man. And then it says, you know, it's got my name on it, and I've got that little patch on my flight suit as well. And so I kind of looked like everybody. And then, of course, I was a former Marine, so I was like more disciplined than all them fucking air winger guys. And, you know, it's funny, like, it's a bunch of generals and pilots, and, like, there's a couple of aces in the room. And I'm like, I'm looking down my nose at everybody, because, like, I was a fucking Marine infantry guy. You guys are all just fucking flyboys. Typical. It's like a kid from Brooklyn who ends up at MIT. He's sitting there, guy's telling him about time travel, and he goes, turns to his buddies and goes, the fuck does this guy know? I'm from Brooklyn. Where's this guy from? So I'm sitting there, the Marine, like, E3, talking to all these zeros. It was really cool. And they find out you're a Marine infantry guy, and they're like, oh my God, they just want to talk to you. What are you doing here? So I sit down, and apparently I'm in the astronaut section. So as I'm sitting there, the row fills up with this, you know, a 5-mission patch, a 3-mission patch, a 180-day patch, the, you know, guys from the space. I'm all in sitting with astronauts. These are all guys that I know the names of. We're all sitting there talking back and forth, and they're just, all they want to do is talk about my airplane, handling characteristics, first time soloing, single hull aircraft, all that kind of stuff. And then Yeager walks in the room. He sits down, Whole room snaps up. Everybody looks over. He goes, "Arr." He sits down. We have the brief. It's really cool. I fly the air show. Good time. Air show ends. I get in my airplane. I got my buddies in his Yak 50. The two of us were getting ready to leave. Edwards Grounds, Yak 9 for Golf Flight of 2. We're on the transient parking for the air show, ready to head out to whatever it was, 25, runway 25 for a eastbound departure. Now for Golf Flight, this is Edwards Ground. Stand by for a moment. And Yeager's parked right next to us. I can't remember if he was next to me or my buddy Tom. So he's in a P-51, and there's a dude flying with him in a T-28. And Yeager's just swinging his arm at the guy like this, and he's shaking his head. And next thing you know, the T-28 and the P-51, they just taxi off. They don't fucking call anybody. So ground says to me, he goes, 9 Alpha Golf Flight, stand by. He says, General Yeager's texting somewhere. So I just thought it was fantastic. So we're just sitting there, and of course, my buddy and I, we're like, kind of like pinch yourself. We had to just hold for General Yeager. Fantastic, but it gets better. So Yeager taxis out. Alpha Golf, it looks like the General's taxiing runway 25 for departure. And I can't remember, it wasn't 25. I don't remember what the runway number was. So if you're a golden arm, don't fucking call me out. I can't remember what the runway was. So we taxi out behind him, and as we're taxiing out, I hear a Marine flight of 5 helicopters taxis in position behind us. So it's Yeager in a 51, some dude in a T-28. It's me leading my flight of 2 Yak 50s, and then 5. I think there were CH-53 Sea Stallions behind me. 5 of them. And it was a 4 of one and a 1 of the other. Maybe there was 5 CH-53s and 1 CH-46. So now, I got a P-51, T-28, and the 2 of us. And our 4 airplanes all look pretty good together. We look good sitting next to a P-51. T-28 looks a little more modern. Then the helicopters are beating the shit out of us. So I'm on tower frequency now, and I'm waiting for my turn. And Yeager is trying to toss hand signals to the guy in the T-28. So we know what frequency he's on because we kind of are World War II buffs, and we kind of do everything kind of World War II style. So we know what Yeager's doing. So I flip over to the frequency, and I'm monitoring the frequency, and I can hear him. God damn it! He's yelling at the guy. The guy doesn't know his hand signals. So, and apparently the dude in the T-28 owned the T-28, and he owned the P-51. He was letting the General fly his P-51 at the show. So the 2 of them are there. Finally, the General goes, ah, and he just doesn't say fucking boo to anybody. There's F-22s coming and going. There's B-52s. There's all kinds of shit flying around. The General just pulls out in the P-51, and you hear the tower go, Edwards traffic, F-15 on final, go around. And F-15 goes around, and Yeager pulls out in the P-51, and he just parks in the middle of the runway waiting for the T-28. They're going to do an echelon departure. They're going to do a wing takeoff. I'm like, oh, shit. So Yeager's sitting there, the T-28's sitting there. And then, of course, what you do, you shuffle up in line. So we pull up, the helicopters pull up. They go back and forth. Finally, I hear over there, God, fuck. Yeager takes the airplane, turns around right in front of us, and he pulls his P-51 right over to me and puts his nose right up to me. I don't have reverse in my airplane. I can't go anywhere. The helicopters are behind us. I got another guy here. I'm on the taxiway, and the tower is saying 9 Alpha Golf Flight, get out of the way. And I got a P-51's nose right in front of me, and it's Yeager. So I hear the Marine on the flight. The Marine calls back, and he goes, Edwards Tower, this Marine flight, blah, 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 blah. We're just going to pull up and hover here for a moment and let the General taxi by. Does that sound acceptable to everybody? Yeager clicks 2 times on the mic. Good enough. I'm like, oh, shit. He's going to taxi underneath the helicopter. Dumbest thing ever. So I take my airplane. I whip it around. I go off into the dirt. We kind of go off into the dirt around, get on the runway. 9 Alpha Golf Flight, ready for departure. And Tower said, 9 Alpha Golf Flight, you're clear for departure. We take off, and as we take off, I see Yeager taxiing back underneath these Marine Corps helicopters, and that's my big Yeager story. I've got some other real war stories, but that's my Yeager story for the day. That's the only hero It's like maybe Chris Kyle, maybe he was a hero, I don't know. I know he would never identify himself as such and never thought he was. I know he thought dudes kicking down doors were heroes, and I know he didn't look at himself as a hero. And I meant Dakota Meyer. I don't even know if Dakota would identify himself as a hero, but maybe he was. He probably was. Yeager was probably a hero. I mean, it's a few guys just crazy. So that's my, how about that? That's my Veterans Day chat about my interaction with other veterans and my thoughts on it. And I bet I'm not too far off from most infantry guys, whether they're in the 82nd, 101st, SF, SEAL teams, recon, or whatever. I bet those guys all feel pretty similar to me, kind of scoff at the whole notion of it. It's really a civilian glammy kind of thing, and I just call bunk and horseshit on the whole hero thing. Just doing your fucking job. So here I am on Veterans Day. I'm getting ready to interview a guy. I just flew in from Chicago for a job here making knives, and I'm going to get to it. So you guys, have a lovely and safe Veterans Day. I hope you're barbecuing, and I hope you're thinking about maybe some of the people you lost. I know it's not Memorial Day, but on Veterans Day, I think about young guys and gals that are sitting out there on the line right now. And what I know is they miss their families, they miss their loved ones, they wonder if they made the right choice, they wonder if they make a difference. So I guess we think about them today. And we think about on Veterans Day, those of us who are veterans, we think about our friends and loved ones we lost and our friends from when we were young and saw the world differently that we got to spend time with and serve with. And we think about our country and the direction it's going, and I hope it goes in a better direction. Anyways, Greg Medford from Medford Knife, I'm out. Enjoy your Veterans Day.